Hello everyone, Benji-Sales here, and let's talk about some March NPD predictions. For those of you that don't know, the NPD group tracks all sorts of items across various markets, but we are of course going to be talking about video game sales in the US market. Now, they get pretty much data from almost every single major retailer, and they also get a lot of digital sales from most of the major publishers and developers as well. Now, of course, there are still some outliers. Nintendo is a prime example of one that does not currently provide digital data, so it's not 100% the full picture, but it's pretty darn close, right? And so very much worth discussing. Now, I like to make predictions on these sorts of things, so let's dive in. First, the big one, hardware. All right, now I'm expecting the Nintendo Switch to be the best-selling console for the month, and by a pretty comfortable margin. So I think PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have a very strong chance of being down year over year. They were down year over year in both January and February, so I think, you know, that's very likely. I've talked about this before. I think these consoles are going to be down year over year most of this year, right? So 2018 was a great year, really, for both, especially for consoles this late in the cycle. So the current generation is winding down. More than likely, we're in the last year and a half-ish, maybe 2 years of the console generation. So these can only sell super high volume for so long. So I think there's a strong chance you see both PlayStation and Xbox One down year over year. The Nintendo Switch I'm expecting to be up year over year. So it was in January and it was up big in February. March I think is going to be another, up month for it. I think it's going to be up most months. The Mario Day sales tracked very strong, so a lot of the big retailers had various promotions around Mario Day in the month of March. You saw games getting discounted when you bought a Switch with them. Games like Smash Brothers and Mario Odyssey and Mario Kart. So, the big evergreen Nintendo titles. And of course, this did generate some strong sales. Now, for those of you that are watching this and also follow me on Twitter, you're probably thinking, well, Benji, what was with this cryptic tweet, right? Now, if you're just listening to this, here's what I tweeted. I've noticed something interesting in regards to console sales in late March, early April. I'll break it down in my March NPD predictions video on YouTube tomorrow. Let's just say the idea Switch will easily take all months this year's best-selling platform may not hold up. So, how did I make a tweet like this and yet I'm still predicting Switch to be the best-selling console? So here is what I noticed. As the month went on, right, as we got into that last week of March and that first week of April, the Switch was slowing harder, right? So I was seeing some bigger drops for the Switch late in the month than I was seeing for the PlayStation 4 specifically, and also Xbox One in terms of percentages, right? So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, the Xbox One and the PS4 outsold the Switch those last 2 weeks. That's not what I'm saying, but what I am saying is that I noticed the Switch was slowing down at a higher rate. So, bigger drops than what you were seeing early on in the month, right? As people were spending those tax returns and, there's a lot more money being able to be spent in February, March, even April, that time frame as people get their tax returns. So with April, this is a bit of a preview, right? This is a bit of, moving ahead. With April having Mortal Kombat 11, as well as Days Gone hitting for the PS4, both of those games review really well. And, we are late in the cycle, so games don't necessarily, it's a lot harder for a game to move hardware than the first, year, 2, 3 years. But let's say Days Gone gets huge reviews. Let's say Mortal Kombat 11 does as well, and who knows, maybe Sony goes crazy and actually does some kind of price promotion around Days Gone. Maybe a Pro gets a slight discount, maybe the standard. Let's be honest, it probably won't because they haven't been discounting much at all. But I'm just saying, I don't think it's crazy to think that maybe the PlayStation 4 can outsell the Switch next month if the Switch continues to slow how I saw it at the end of March, early April. So that's what that tweet's about. Maybe the Mario Day sales kind of moved some of those late month Switch sales up, so there's always a chance of that. I'll have to look at April data as it comes in, before I you know, take a strong stance on that. But yeah, something to talk about in regards to March. I still think, like I said, Switch is your leading console for the month pretty comfortably. Those early weeks of March were, I mean, huge for it. Mario Days week did great. So going to be up year over year. It's going to be your best-selling console for March, but cautiously, let's see if maybe the PS4 can catch up to it, you know, maybe in April and be a better-selling console there. Now, in terms of ranking, you know, I think it's going to be, of course, Switch, PS4, Xbox One. That's what we saw in both January. That's what we saw in February. I don't see why that would change much in March. You know, the only major release for the Switch was Yoshi. So, yes, it didn't have as big of games, which we'll talk about in the software predictions portion of this video. Games weren't as big and as exciting for the Switch, but the hardware is still newer. There's just still more natural demand for that console right now since the Xbox One and the PS4 have been around for so long. So that's going to do it for the hardware predictions. Let's jump into software. Alrighty, so software predictions. We had a lot of really big releases this month. January and February saw some big releases too. So Q1 has been, you know, pretty stacked. That's something we've been seeing over recent years is a lot of publishers are liking to put their games out early in the year, right? Used to be kind of just holiday was, you know, really the craziest. Q3, Q4, really from like September to December craziness. And then you'd see a few little, you know, sprinkles throughout the year. Really, Q1 has become a very, very heavy release schedule in recent years for the video game market. I'm liking it. I'm hoping summer can kind of start picking up too, right? Because summer is still pretty darn dead, you know, for the video game industry. You always get, you know, 1, 2, you get some big hitters, but you don't get like what we're seeing in Q1 where you get multiple major releases per month. Yeah, so your best-selling game for the month. First, let's dive into a poll that I put up on my Twitter, and I asked you what you think will be the best-selling game. So, as of the time of the shooting of this video, it had 478 votes, so almost 500, and 58% of you think it's going to be The Division 2, 26% going with Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, 10% for Devil May Cry 5, and 6% for Yoshi's Crafted World. Well, I think 58% of you are right on the money. So Division 2 I am expecting to be the best-selling game for the month of March. It didn't have the biggest launch in terms of, now it was still a big launch, right? A lot of games would have killed to launch with the numbers that the Division 2 had. But, I mean, in comparison to the Division 1. So the Division 1 was a record-setting new IP-sized launch. It was gigantic, enormous, right? Up there with Destiny in terms of just gigantic releases. Division 2's launch did not meet those sales, right? It wasn't the same size launch. But one thing I am seeing with the Division 2 is much better legs, right? So Division 1 in terms of percentages. So it started lower, so you know your second, your third week aren't going to be quite as high in terms of units as Division 1's was because it was starting from so high. But I mean percentage drops, right? So Division 1 was falling much harder than what you're seeing the Division 2 because of great word of mouth. The game seems to be pretty widely loved, which for these loot shooter games is kind of rare, right? A lot of these games start off really rough waters, and you know they got to catch up to what people's expectations are. Division 2 has been a bit of an outlier on that, and yeah, launch seems solid, but legs seem great. So I expect this game to keep selling, you know, throughout the rest of the year, to be honest with you, especially as they keep adding more content. As long as it's as high of quality, you know, DLC as what we're seeing with the original game. So Division 2, I think it's your best-selling game for the month, and I think by a pretty wide margin. So huge sales overall. Number 2 for the month, I'm going to predict that to be Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Now, this is a new IP. It's from Software, you know, who's well known for the Dark Souls games and Bloodborne. And yeah, it again, very strong critically in reviews, very strong, you know, with gamers. A lot of, you know, did huge on PC, right? We saw it have a really impressive PC launch in terms of concurrent users. and yeah, it seems to be selling well on all platforms. So PlayStation 4 and PC, are going to be moving a lot more copies of this game, I believe, than Xbox One is. But Xbox is still selling a lot too. So this game is hitting well across a lot of demos. I'm curious to see what legs will be like, right? Because this is extraordinarily difficult game. I'm hearing a lot of people say it's even harder than the Souls games. I haven't played it yet. I do own it, but haven't gotten a chance to get to it. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is just too long. But yeah, so I'm interested to see what legs will be like long term. But yeah, for the month of March specifically, I think that is going to be your number 2 for the month. But something I'm going to note on that, something else that's top 5, I believe, is going to be MLB The Show. So a lot of people always forget about these sports games, and all the hype that we talk about on these, big AAA games. Well, sports games have a lot of fans too. So, there is a chance that MLB could slip in there and take it from Sekiro. I do think MLB is going to be top 5. I'm not 100% sure on placement on that. Devil May Cry 5 also released this month. I'm expecting it to have the best launch month sales for any Devil May Cry game ever tracked by the NPD. So yeah, don't expect giant, massive, crazy sales for Devil May Cry 5. It's not that huge mainstream IP, but I do expect it to be the biggest launch ever for the series. So Capcom should be really, really happy with its performance. I think it's going to finish in your top 5, definitely 100% in your top 10, but more than likely in the top 5 as well. The other big new release that we saw for the month of March was Yoshi's Crafted World. Now, this was really the only huge release for the Switch. Didn't have a ton of competition on the platform, so I do expect it to do really well. I think it's going to do around that Kirby type performance, but a little bit better. So I do think it's going to do a bit better than Kirby did on the Switch, but don't expect anything insane. Don't expect, a Mario Odyssey or a Zelda type performance. Of course not. It's a Yoshi game, but it seems to have done pretty well for itself. So another, nice little hit for the Switch. And yeah, outside of the major releases, what other software things am I expecting? So I'm expecting a huge drop for Anthem, right? So that was your number 1 best-selling game for the month of February, but I do expect a pretty substantial drop in March. I think it's going to be your low top 10, that 8, 9, 10 range, but I'll be honest, I won't even be shocked if it's more top 15. So, for my actual prediction, I'm going to go, low top 10, but yeah, I'd be more surprised if this game finishes in your top 5. Like, if it finishes top 5, then it will in that 10 to 15 range. I think it's dropping that hard. There's always a chance, it's doing something crazy digitally that I'm not seeing. I don't have a ton of visibility to digital data. There are a few things that I can track and that help on that. But yeah, physical, of course, is much easier for me to see. So, and these loot games do sell huge digitally. They do 50+% digital ratios. So, there's always a chance something crazy is going on there, but I don't think, that's the case. I am expecting a very strong drop for Anthem. Hopefully they can turn it around. Game's been struggling critically and with fans. So it had a good solid launch, but yeah, it's going to need quite a turnaround, I think, to see strong legs out of it. Of course, the top 20 is going to be littered with a lot of those Nintendo Evergreen titles. You're probably going to see a boost on some of those due to those Mario Day promotions. So Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers was part of a lot of those. So you're probably going to see a lift there. You're probably going to see them do pretty solid. It'd be fun if we could see Mario and Rabbids slip back in there in the lower top 20. I don't necessarily expect that because it was going for really cheap during the Mario Day sales. I think it was like $20. So on a revenue-based chart, that will be difficult for it to chart. But that would be cool if we could see it kind of slip in there. That game has had surprisingly good legs, so a lot of people don't realize that because it doesn't show up super high on any of these charts. But it's been a steady seller, right? It's been slowly moving some more units. So I think, Ubisoft and Nintendo are really happy with how that game's performed. And yeah, I think that is going to cover all of the software predictions. And finally, as always, thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, don't expect these predictions to be 100% right on the money. I am confident in them. You know, I do think I'm educated on these matters, and I think it's a lot of fun to go in with these predictions. You know, I have a pretty good track record with it, but I'm not perfect. So, of course, you know, this is more for fun than anything else. Yeah, you know, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the like if you enjoyed the video. I'll, of course, do a reaction video to this once the actual results come out, and we'll do a deep dive and break it all down, see what I was right on, see what I was wrong on. And yeah, let me know in the comments on the video what you think, you know, in terms of software and hardware, how you think everything's going to rank. The best place to get a hold of me, of course, is at Benji-Sales on Twitter. I do go into the comments and respond to people on YouTube as well, but I'm way more active in terms of engaging with people on Twitter. So yeah, if you want to talk to me about anything, if you want to discuss something, if you want to give me, you know, recommendations on things to do for videos, you know, get a hold of me at Benji-Sales on Twitter. And yeah, thanks again everyone for watching. I will see you in the next video.